Hey there, I'm George from Pavliscak Studios. I'll be making a glass marble today. I'm going to be making it out of glass rods on a propane oxygen torch. It's going to be a flower marble. And I'm trying a slightly lower camera angle to start off the new year. Alright, for flower marble, it's going to be mostly clear, and then it's going to have a two-dimensional drawing cross-section of a flower, which I'm then going to turn inside out to make a three-dimensional flower. So I've got a lot of rods, which are on the shorter side, that I could use to start this marble, but that ends up with your hands getting pretty hot. And since I haven't attached handles to these in advance, I'm going to go ahead and move some of this stuff out of the way and come back with a new glass rod that we'll start with today. And here it is. Long, large diameter rod. Just clean it off. A little bit of water. And since the end is cut, you can see it's a cut end, those little corners are going to devitrify or oxidize when I melt them. So I'm going to come back in and pick that slight oxidation off once the gather gets going. The gather will form a ball on the end, and it'll get larger and larger and increase past the diameter of the rod. After it gets to a certain size, I'm going to turn it upside down like this, flatten it, and then on the front surface of that disc I'll draw my flower. Right now I'm flashing the rod and sort of whipping the end through the flame to gradually bring the temperature up. And that way the rod won't crackle and pop and just keep shattering instead of melting as I would like. The glass I'm using is kind of susceptible to shock, so I do have to bring up these larger glass rods pretty slowly in temperature. So I end up flashing them for a minute or two. And then I can sort of slow down and get the feel of where my temperature is on the edge of the rod. If I hear that there's little pieces from the corners popping off, I can return to flashing. But you get a good feel for it after a while of what temperature the rod is at. Although sometimes if there's an imperfection in the rod, it can surprise you. And explode. So the rod is starting to melt on the end, and I can see some of those little imperfections in the glass starting to come to light. So I got my tweezers out. I'm going to peel away any bad glass on the surface. And when I say bad, I just mean that it's not perfectly clear. It looks fuzzy, it looks cloudy, it looks fluffy, and that translate into a poor surface when the marble is complete. So there's a lot of things you can do to improve the marble as you go. Some things trial and error, some things you can get from taking what tips make sense to you from people who've done it for a while. I've done it for a long time, so hopefully I'll have something to say that makes sense to you. The gather has started to form. You can see it's a ball. It's orange, hot. And as it starts to get hot, I'll hold it even, but as it starts to form the gather, I'll tilt it back a little bit so the ball of molten glass in the end is rolling back gently onto the shaft of the rod, allowing it to increase in size. I just want to get a little bit bigger than this. So I have trying another new filter on my lens for this first demonstration of the year. And so, trying to look at what the camera looks like. It's pretty good. You don't see the sodium flare, which is a giant, would be a big orange, yellow, bushy flame coming off of this glass. But you're not seeing that. Nope. So now this gather is getting almost to the size that I want, and it's looking very clean. I see some bubbles inside. I'm not going to be able to pick those out without delaying this process a lot. So I need my graphite paddle. I'm going to use a combination of this graphite paddle and a graphite marvering plate to hold this rod perpendicular to the graphite plate I'm using. Let this gather flatten out, and I'm also going to squish it flat from above with this paddle, sort of pinching it, making a pliers on the fly with my bench as the lower jaw. Alright, let's do that now. Gravity itself doesn't let that gather get squished as flat as I would like. I would like that disc to be big. Oh, look at how big it is. Because I'm going to draw my flower two-dimensionally on that disc. I'm going to start in the middle with the stamen. Some black stamen. Turn the flame down. When I'm using these tiny threads that I pulled in advance down from rods, larger diameters, I like the flame to be just a pinpoint, so I can put those dots right where I want. I wanted 5 little dots, and there they are. Next I pulled some blue of a color that is not available in the brand of glass that I use, so I mixed it. They have dark blues, they have light blues, and they have a turquoise blue, which is very susceptible to reduction, meaningless detail. But I like to mix my own medium blues, just like mixing oranges or pinks or anything like that. You know, you find you have certain colors that you like, and they're not available, so you just figure out your own way of making them. Now I'm laying down little worms, little slugs of glass, which are going to be like dashes to the dots of the stamen. And there's my first concentric circle of petals for the flower. Let's turn the heat up. Heat up my disc. I don't want things to get too cold. Cold relative term. This glass, I don't want it to drop below 1200. I'll drop it down to 1000 when I'm done and put it in the annealing oven, but before that I want it to stay all up to working temperature and above. There you can see those little dashes melted in just a little bit. Now let's put the next ring of petals around. It's our two-dimensional flower cross-section. And there's our second concentric circle of petals. Now, let's melt those into the surface of the disc so that they start to get pulled in by the surface tension of the glass as it melts. When it gets a little closer to being even with the surface of the disc, I'm going to come back with a little tool, a little pick, a little pokey thing, and in each of those petals I'm going to put a little divot. That divot's going to translate into a point that pushes the petal ever so slightly into the disc of the glass. That's going to be the starting point, the uppermost, outermost point of each petal. So let's melt this in a little bit farther, then we're going to look at it. You can see the camera a second to adjust. Those are really melted into the surface of that disc. Not completely, but quite a bit. Now I'm going to heat just a few of those petals. Poke in where I want the tip to be. Heat a few. Poke them. Heat a few more. Poke them in. I'm going to go all the way around, and I'll show you guys what I've been doing. I'm going to poke in a little bit, not too deep. I don't want to poke through the color. I just want to push the color a little bit into the clear disc. Let's see, can we see that? I can see that. Let's look at it. No, that's not close. Let's go back to the magnifying glass. Looks nice. All right. Now I want to start turning all of this a little bit inside out. The outside of this disc is going to start flopping downwards because I'm going to hold it at an angle. Flop down. Glass from the outside is going to come around, and then I'm going to push this cup flat. It's going to become a disc, become a cup from the disc. Then I'm going to transform it back into a disc. Let's get that going once, and we'll see what it looks like. As I do that, the glass from the outside is going to come around and go up to the center. I'm going to turn that disc gradually inside out. It won't be dramatically inside out. Just going to go like 60 degrees around, but that 60 degrees around of turning inside out is going to make that flower bloom from a flat out into a three-dimensional flower. Now the disc is starting to crumple, and I'm just going to keep turning it and adjusting it and going slower in places where it needs to melt more and faster in places where it's already melted until it becomes cup shaped, and I'm just going to push it flat. Push it flat. Let's do it one more time. And as I do this, I'm turning this disc a little bit inside out. The design that I've drawn on there is already a little bit smaller. So each time I cup and push this disc, the design is going to contract. And so after one or two more times of cupping and pushing, it's going to contract enough that I'm going to have more room on the surface of the disc to put another concentric circle. This time I'm not going to put more petals, I'm going to put petioles. So leaves around the petals of the flower. Cupped and pushed, and now it's contracted again. Let's put those petioles on. I happen to have a green thread that I pulled in advance, because I've done this a time or two. Sometimes it's fun just to sit around and do prep work. You mix greens and blues, or purples and oranges, or whatever colors you feel like you're going to need that week. Just mix colors and pull them into threads. You don't have to have your annealing oven on or anything else, just your torch and the glass. These little threads don't need to be annealed. And it's nice. You can put handles on your short glass rods and fuse your other glass rods together. Just the process is, I find, fun and amazing. You know, you eventually do get to the finished product at the end. And by then, you've done all the fun parts. Then you gotta try to sell it or take pictures of it, put it on the web. We hate that part. hopefully this spring we will get back to the farmer's market. Currently, all scheduling is still on hold for this upcoming year. I've gotten a lot of updates from various shows and vendors, and they all said, let's wait. I was like, ah. But we just don't know, so we'll see what happens. So I think I'll probably put some very expensive marbles on eBay this week. And then I'll put the same marble for like half of that price on my website. My actual price on my website. Just don't care to sell on eBay if I can avoid it, because between PayPal fees, which are amazingly high now, and eBay fees, which are also amazingly high, it's just taking all the possible money you make out of your product. And there's no point in trying to sell them if you're not going to make money enough with them. Especially if you're mostly about the process. You just throw them back in the bucket, melt them back down. Alright, so now I'm cupping and pushing the petioles and the petals, and look at how it's shrunk down. You can see it starting to bloom up as a marble. And you can see those little points that I pushed up the pick into those petal dots, those little slugs. I'm going to get this back in the flame. And we're going to cup and push it a couple more times. Once it's turned inside out enough to where it's contracting down to a point, then we can start adding the back side of the marble on. So let's just turn the flame up a little bit. And I'm going to cup and push this one more time, and you'll really be able to see it on the side blooming up. And because I was yapping and not paying real close attention to my marble, I got like it's still cup shaped. I can't push it completely back to disc shape. There you can see the flower blooming. Neat. So I'll just have to see if I can adjust to get this back so I get rid of that divot. Otherwise, if I trap that whole cup divot, it's going to be a big air bubble in the middle of my flower, which is okay, but I'd rather not have that. And I just let certain parts of the disc get too cold and other parts get too hot. So I'm going to try to get some flame way up in that cup and do a couple of small pushes. See if I can close that up. It's closing up. And now I can even reach in there with another small glass rod and pull that cup inside out, which I might do. I'm going to see if I can let it close on its own. Because otherwise, this flower is looking pretty nice. Once the flower is essentially bloomed, that's like the top 2/3 of the marble. Then we'll work on the back third, which is some background of the flower, color the backdrop of the flower. So it'll be like it's sitting on grass or a tablecloth or something, complementary color, coordinated color. And so rather than just having it sit on a solid color, we'll add a little bit of hints of flowers in the background. So since this is a blue flower, there's black stamen, I have a stringer that I pull that's black, or purple and blue, which will make some nice tiny flowers for the background that we'll put in. So like painting, where you do the background first and you come to the foreground in layers, this is sort of starting at the top and working your way down. In glassworking, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can start at one aspect and move through the center of the marble to the other side, and then you can change the axis that you're looking at the whole thing and start messing with it again, whereas you can't do that in two-dimensional media. Most people don't care to do that because you spend so much time on one dimension, you don't want to go back and mess up your work by adding something on a different plane or a different axis. But I think that's hilarious, so I do it all the time. So now that flower has contracted to a point on the backside. Looks neat. Looks like a flower. Hot damn. And there it is from the side. Alright, so let's put a couple little floral dots. Just tiny. They'll get magnified and blurred as the light bends through the clear glass around the flower when you're looking at it. So marble is essentially a lens, as a sphere, whose focal length is on the far side of the sphere. A lens you can't even look all the way through. So these will get almost focused because they aren't all the way through to the far focal length. Those little teeny tiny multicolored dots. Those will be nice to look at. You won't be even sure what you're seeing. It'll be like a hint of a flower. Now I'm going to add the backdrop color. So this dark and medium blue flower, I'm going to have it sitting on a light blue backdrop. And so I want to cover those dots that I put on there. This will be sort of, if you were doing a painting and you were painting the sky first, this is the sky, second to last. And then once the sky is done, I'm going to grab the sky and turn it around, looking at it from like outside of the planet that the sky is on. Decorate the other side. I'm just sharpening this rod to a point, as I might use it for a puntee or a handle to hold on to the side that I'm creating here when I'm ready to decorate it. I've decided. But now if you look in at this, you can see the flower. You can see those little tiny dark blue flowers on the light blue backdrop a little bit. It'll become more evident when the flower is complete and the marble is complete. Well, when everything's complete. Or I'll mess it up, and it won't. Let's find out. So now I put the backdrop on marble. Now I need to turn that back half into sort of a hemisphere. Then I'm going to get I might decorate a little bit first, but then after I'm done, it's rounded and slightly decorated. I'm going to get a handle on this end and then melt this rod off of the clear portion of the marble over the top of the flower. So let's get a marble mold. Graphite marble mold is basically many sizes of hemispheres. And so I'm going to use a hemisphere that's larger than my marble and just give it a little spin in there to improve the shape. I'm not trying to go and do it all at once. I'm going to do it as much as I feel the glass can move without doing something I don't want to happen to the inside of the glass where I've put all my work into the design. So shape the outside without getting to the inside. This is a constant back and forth about making marbles. Sometimes you want to change the outside shape without influencing your inside design. And other times you want the inside design to change and you're not very concerned about the outside yet. So like if you're doing a swirl, or actually some of the stacked dots, twisty marble designs that I do, where I'm doing a lot of precision manipulation in the center of the marble, it's like a different aspect of controlling the heat in the glass. Now this has really become hemispherical on this side. You can see the flower amidst its petioles. You can see the backdrop. So the back half of the sky is plain. So let's put something on there. And I got some dark green thread. I'm going to draw a little wavy line going back and forth across the line of that blue and the clear. And then I'm going to put some leaves and stems coming out from the middle. Basically like a little star. Now I'm going to go and examine this thread of multicolored blues and purples, and I'm going to just add some little tiny twisted dots. Touch, twist, release. The little flowers on the ends of the little stem, the bouquet. Heat those and then press them in. Then I'll gently put a handle on that, right in the middle of those little stems that I put on that flower decoration on the back side of the sky, this marble, or the landscape that it sits upon. So I'm going to use a small steel rod. There it is. Heat it till it's orange and heat the glass back up so that I can actually fuse this red hot, yellow hot steel rod into the surface of the marble, just maybe a millimeter, not even. Now I'm heating the junction between the large diameter clear glass rod and the marble. And when it starts to get smooshy, I am going to separate the two. And it will probably leave a little bit too much clear on the actual marble, and I'll probably pull some off. When you first start making stuff out of glass, you're always like, let's make it big. Let's leave everything on there, because bigger is better. And that can be true, but I want the marble the size that it should be based upon the flower that I've built inside. So I'm okay with this clear glass coming off. I'm going into some water. Now I've pulled off, I think, as much clear as I want. I'm going to just heat it, make it spherical. I'll start in a graphite marble mold that's bigger in diameter, like I did the first time in my marble. Then I'll go to a smaller one, a hemisphere. I'm not even using the hemisphere itself, I'm just using the rim of the edge of the hemisphere. And then I'm changing the axis of rotation as I rotate. And that is pulling my sphere closer to perfection. So rotating, changing the axis of rotation. We've made it pretty spherical. If you look at the surface, it's kind of ripply because I chilled it pretty fast in that graphite. Graphite pulls a lot of heat out of it. So let's make it smooth by using the turning, the rotation of the whole marble, the heat melting the surface of the marble, surface tension of the glass pulling itself smooth. And since I had it mostly spherical, it wants to be a sphere, except for gravity wants to pull it down. If I hold it this way, it wants to pull egg-shaped. If I'm going to pull this way, it tends to become oblate, more disc-like. So you can adjust this way, you can adjust with the spin. And we've got it pretty nicely spherical. I'm going to finish off this side in a cherry wood marble mold. I'm going to grab cherry wood patterns, and I'm just going to give a quick spin in each of the rims of these holes in the cherry wood mold. And now I'm going to get a nice clean pointy end. This one looks pretty clean, but a lot of times I will just go ahead and get my tweezer, make sure that glass is very clean, so nothing on it, no oxidation, and I'm just going to make a semi-cold joint between the marble and the punty. It's my last connection to the glass piece. I'll want to chill that junction and just crack it off later. So, got a little bit of a divot where that last punty attached. So I'm going to heat this up, pinch it closed, pull a tiny bit of glass out, close up that divot, a little bit more out. I'm going to just persuade it closed like that. Didn't quite get it all. A little more persuasion. Now I'm just going to heat it like I did the first side. And the sphericalness is a little bit off. So I'm going to heat it, and I'm going to just gently and quickly go through my graphite molds to improve the sphericalness just a hair. Get it. Now I have ripples on the surface again on this side. So I'm going to keep it adjusted. Turning it in the fire. The surface is melting. The surface tension is pulling it smooth. Keeping it rotated so gravity doesn't pull it down. I don't want to pull it this way too much because I don't want it to pull into an egg shape. I don't want it to fall back on itself like a disc. This one is pretty even. I am making adjustments in all those pitch roll, yaw. And it's pretty round. A little more heat, and then I'm going to let it calm down, and I'm going to do a last shaping run in the cherry wood paddles. It's basically a flat board that's been soaked in water with holes in it. Spin just for a few seconds each rim mold. Now you chill that juncture right there. Scissors. And I have a fireproof board next to me. It's a pressed fiber Frax tile. Just tapping off any loose carbon inside the torch. Then I'm going to flame polish that junction point that I just cracked off the marble. There's almost no mark left. So just getting that last bit polished so you won't be able to tell where that last connection was. Now I need to pick up the marble and move it to the annealing oven. So I'm going to use these tweezers. I'll heat them until they turn orange. And that is actually too hot. So we're going to let those cool down until they turn black. Just wait for a little bit. There. Now we can pick up the marble. Look at it one last time before it goes in the annealing oven. Flour. And we'll take it over there before it gets too cold. And there, it's in the annealing oven where it needs to stay for about an hour, because that's kind of a small marble. And then over 2 hours, I will ramp the temperature down. And tomorrow, I'll take pictures of it and show what we've made today in the demonstration. And next week, we'll probably do one of my second most favorite and notable marbles, which is either a monster eye or a dragon eye, and those are fun. They take a little bit longer than a small flower there. Anything when you go bigger, things take longer using the process that I'm using, because the torch is fairly small. It's a unidirectional heat. It's just from one place, as opposed to like one of those holes that you see that has flames swirling around in it. And those allow you to work bigger. I don't usually have one of those going. I'm probably going to have one later this winter running. I will have my furnace running briefly, maybe next week. We'll do a marble out of that if it is running. Otherwise, I'll be doing some pressing molds. That's always fun to watch. If I do that when I'm in mid-production, I will flip on the camera and I'll talk trash about that as I'm doing it. I've made a lot of interesting, graphite pressing molds that I've been working on with some text and other designs and stuff in them. Should be cool. I'm doing some sort of some research to see what a good depth is and stuff like that. Art is great. You can really there's no end of directions you can go in. Even like you'd say, is this even glass? Yes, it is. It's glass related because I'm figuring out how to use Dremel routing tools. It's very refreshing to sort of reset your process and do something else that leads into what you want to do sideways. Very cool. And I might show some of that too. I don't know. Pretty boring. Probably not interested in that. I'll talk about it anyway, and you just won't have to watch. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.